It was a crisp morning in the heart of a bustling medieval village somewhere in England. The sun had barely risen over the thatched roofs, casting golden slivers of light across the cobblestone streets. Smoke from the baker's oven drifted lazily into the air, mingling with the earthy scent of the nearby fields where peasants were already at work. In one of the larger, more comfortably constructed homes near the center of the village, a woman named Eleanor prepared herself for the day. Eleanor, like many women of her social standing in the 14th century, took meticulous care with her appearance. Today, she intended to attend the morning market, and the way she presented herself could speak volumes about her family's status, wealth, and reputation. Eleanor began by drawing water from the well in the courtyard, her hands roughened from years of labor, but her movements precise and practiced. She washed her face in a wooden basin, the water cold and sharp against her skin. It was said that clear, pale skin was a symbol of nobility, a mark that a woman spent her days indoors, protected from the harsh sun that tanned the hands of laborers and field workers. Eleanor's own skin was naturally fair, but she still went through her daily ritual to ensure it remained as luminous as possible. She reached for a small jar made of polished wood, carefully lifting the lid to reveal a powdery white substance. This was the foundation of her morning ritual. It's a mixture of lead carbonate and crushed alabaster, designed to give her complexion that sought-after porcelain appearance, while today it would be frowned upon for health reasons. In her time, such powders were prized, despite the dangers they carried. She dabbed the powder carefully with a soft cloth, smoothing it across her cheeks and forehead, careful not to leave streaks. The scent of the powder was faint, earthy, and somewhat metallic, but Eleanor hardly noticed. To her, this was beauty distilled into its simplest, most immediate form. After the base layer, Eleanor moved on to her lips. She reached for a small wooden container filled with a dark red paste, made from crushed berries and mixed with animal fat. This rudimentary lipstick gave her lips a subtle, natural-looking tint. The colors varied from deep crimson to soft pink, depending on the season and the fruits that could be harvested. Eleanor preferred a muted shade, one that suggested modesty and refinement rather than boldness or ostentation. Applying it carefully with her finger, she made sure each curve of her lips was evenly colored. In those days, the mouth was a focal point of expression, and a well-tinted lip could communicate everything from elegance to subtle flirtation. Next came the eyes. Though the medieval approach to eye makeup was far simpler than what modern women might expect, Eleanor had no pots of eyeshadow or rows of brushes. Instead, she used a soft black soot from the fireplace to darken the edges of her eyelids. This soot was carefully mixed with a bit of water or oil to create a mild pigment, applied with a small stick or the corner of a cloth. The effect was subtle, yet striking, giving depth to her gaze without appearing overtly artificial. Medieval women did not strive for the dramatic contrasts of contemporary makeup. The goal was enhancement, a gentle emphasis on natural features. Eleanor's eyebrows required attention as well. She plucked stray hairs with small, handmade tweezers, shaping them to a delicate arch that framed her eyes. Perfect symmetry was not necessary. In fact, slightly uneven brows were considered natural and appealing. Some women of higher status darkened their brows using powders derived from crushed nuts or charcoal, but Eleanor preferred the soft, muted lines of her own hair. Once her facial preparations were complete, she turned her attention to her hair. Cleanliness and presentation were as important as the cosmetics themselves. She brushed through her long chestnut hair, removing tangles with a wooden comb. A touch of scented oil, often infused with herbs like rosemary or lavender, gave her locks a soft shine and a faint, lingering fragrance. The oil also helped keep the hair manageable, reducing breakage from the daily combing and braiding rituals. Women of her era often wore their hair long, either flowing in loose waves or tied back in intricate braids, which signaled both beauty and virtue. Eleanor preferred a modest braid wrapped around her head, secured with pins carved from bone and adorned with a single, small ribbon dyed with natural pigments as she fastened the final pin. Eleanor reflected on the origins of these beauty practices. The knowledge had been passed down from mother to daughter for generations, often preserved in scraps of parchment or through oral instruction. Medieval beauty was deeply intertwined with notions of health, morality, and social standing. Pale skin signaled a life of leisure and purity. A flushed cheek, sometimes achieved with crushed rose petals, suggested vitality and youth. Red lips conveyed attractiveness and social refinement. Every step, every mixture, every brushstroke was imbued with meaning far beyond mere appearance. In the background, the sounds of the village continued. Chickens clucking, merchants shouting about their wares, the occasional neigh of a horse. Eleanor's youngest son toddled around her feet, fascinated by the wooden spoons and bowls scattered across the floor. She smiled, adjusting his cap. Simple fabric hat that shielded him from the sun while marking him as a child of respectable lineage, even in the midst of domestic duties. The preparation of appearance was a ritual that defined her place in the world. Eleanor's gaze fell upon a small mirror, framed with carved oak. Mirrors were rare and precious, often only available to those who could afford them. The reflection staring back at her was the result of hours of careful preparation, a testament to centuries of tradition and subtle artistry. She examined her face critically, smoothing out any imperfection with gentle fingers, and nodded with satisfaction. Today, she would present herself to the world as a woman of grace, knowledge, and unspoken authority. The final touch was a faint application of powder along the neck and décolletage, areas often exposed beneath the modest neckline of her gown. Even here, the symbolism of fairness was important. The more uniform and pale the skin, the more it suggested a life of refinement and careful cultivation. Eleanor dressed slowly, choosing a gown of soft wool, dyed in muted shades of blue, with sleeves that fell elegantly to her wrists. The fabric smelled faintly of lavender and beeswax, substances used both for scent and preservation. As she adjusted her gown and smoothed her skirts, Eleanor's mind wandered to the origins of her beauty routines. Ingredients for cosmetics were drawn from both local and imported sources: crushed minerals, plant extracts, and sometimes even substances more exotic, like crushed pearls or finely powdered silver. Recipes were carefully guarded secrets within households, passed down as practical wisdom as much as a symbol of culture. In some cases, women experimented with these mixtures, testing their effects on small patches of skin or observing the reactions of friends and family before applying them more broadly. By the time Eleanor stepped out into the sunlight, the village had awakened fully. Merchants were arranging their produce, calling out prices. Children ran laughing through the streets. The baker's dog barked insistently at a cat slipping across a fence. Eleanor walked with measured steps, her head held high, every movement precise and deliberate. To an observer, she was simply a woman heading to the market. But behind every gesture lay a history of knowledge, tradition, and carefully cultivated beauty. Passing by the marketplace, she noticed other women preparing for the day as well. Some carried pouches of crushed berries, others small containers of powder, all following the same time-honored practices. Each woman's method varied slightly, shaped by the ingredients they could access, their social standing, and the personal touches inherited from mothers and grandmothers. There was no shame in imitation. The lineage of beauty practices was a communal inheritance, a shared language expressed through color, texture, and subtle enhancement. Eleanor approached the well-worn wooden stall of a local apothecary, an elderly man who had supplied generations of village women with their favorite pigments and powders. His knowledge of herbs, minerals, and pigments was unparalleled. Blend of practical experimentation and centuries of lore. She purchased a small sachet of crushed rose petals intended for cheeks and lips, and a vial of faintly shimmering powder that would add a delicate highlight to her face in the afternoon sun. The apothecary offered advice in a low voice, recounting stories of noblewomen from distant towns, and Eleanor listened with rapt attention. In this exchange, the mundane act of buying cosmetics became a lesson in history, culture, and shared wisdom, with her purchases tucked safely into a leather pouch. Eleanor continued her stroll through the marketplace. Every glance she received from passers-by, every nod of recognition from acquaintances, reaffirmed the importance of her careful preparation. Beauty in the medieval period was not simply about aesthetics. It was a signal of competence, virtue, and social awareness. A woman who neglected these rituals risked more than a blemish on her skin. Her reputation, her marriage prospects, and her family standing could all be subtly affected. By the time Eleanor returned home, the sun had risen high, casting warm light across the courtyard. She set down her purchases, washed her hands once more, and prepared a light meal for her family. The morning's labor of beauty had left her looking composed, radiant, and subtly commanding in presence. Each ingredient, each stroke of powder, each carefully blended pigment was part of a continuum stretching back generations, a tangible connection to women who had walked these streets long before her. Women who had understood that beauty was both art and necessity, expression and protection. As Eleanor served her children their porridge, she reflected quietly on the day ahead. Though her family would continue their routines, the knowledge she carried in her hands and her face was something more enduring, a legacy of refinement, tradition, and the understated power of a woman who knew the language of her own appearance. In the medieval world, where survival and status were intertwined, every detail of presentation mattered. And Eleanor moved through her home and village with the quiet authority of one who stood this truth deeply. The afternoon sun hung low over the village, casting long shadows across the uneven cobblestones. Eleanor had finished her household's chores and now found a quiet moment to observe the nuances of beauty and presentation around her. Women of different ages, statuses, and trades moved through the streets, each with subtle variations in their approach to cosmetics. It was fascinating to see how personal preference, availability of ingredients, and social pressures influenced the smallest details of their appearance. A young girl, no older than 12, was attempting her first applications under the guidance of her mother. The girl's small hands trembled as she carefully patted a faint powder across her cheeks, imitating the gestures she had seen for years. Eleanor watched with a smile. In many households, such early training was considered essential. It was not merely a matter of vanity, but an introduction to the social codes that governed behavior, poise, and perception. From a young age, girls were taught that their appearance could affect not just their own opportunities, but also the reputation of their families. The materials used for makeup in this period were a complex mix of local resources and imported substances, often stored in small wooden boxes, ceramic jars, or leather pouches. Lead-based powders, while dangerous, were highly prized for the pale complexion they produced. Rosewater and milk were applied to soothe and moisturize the skin, a precaution against the harsh effects of powdered cosmetics. Soot, charcoal, and crushed berries were common for lips and eyes, providing subtle color and shading without requiring exotic imports. Eleanor herself maintained a balance, favoring ingredients that were both effective and relatively safe, a consideration born from observing the ill effects on women who had overused harsher materials. Eleanor's attention shifted to her own reflection in a polished copper basin, catching glimpses of her own face as she passed by. Even after several hours, the makeup she had applied that morning held firm. The crushed rose petals she had purchased from the apothecary earlier in the day would soon add a gentle flush to her cheeks, blending naturally with the powder she had applied. The subtle shimmer from the mineral powder on her cheekbones reflected sunlight, highlighting the structure of her face in a manner that was understated but undeniably effective. Every aspect of her appearance was deliberate, crafted to communicate refinement without seeming artificial. Nearby, a group of older women congregated near the fountain, discussing new mixtures they had discovered in distant towns. One woman spoke animatedly about a fine, powdered silver she had acquired from a traveling merchant, claiming it added a delicate luminescence to the skin that could not be matched by any local ingredients. Another demonstrated a method for using crushed almonds mixed with rose water to smooth and brighten the complexion. It's a secret she had guarded for decades. Eleanor listened discreetly, noting techniques that might enhance her own routines. In the medieval period, these exchanges were as much a part of education and social bonding as they were about aesthetics. Knowledge of cosmetics was considered essential for any woman of social standing, and those who excelled in its application were respected in subtle but meaningful ways. Eleanor recalled tales from her mother and grandmother, stories of noble women who maintained secret formulae for powders and tints, sometimes so potent that they could be detected by their shimmer even in dim candlelight. These recipes were closely guarded, passed down in whispered instructions in carefully folded scraps of parchment. A single ingredient could define a woman's signature look and set her apart in courtly circles. It was a combination of artistry, chemistry, and social intelligence, a skill that required patience, attention to detail, and a deep understanding of both natural materials and human perception. As the day progressed, Eleanor returned home to prepare a simple midday meal, mindful of the fact that the smallest actions could affect the longevity of her carefully applied makeup. Cooking with open flames and smoke could dull pigments or cause powder to shift, so she moved deliberately, using cloths to shield her face and occasionally dabbing with a small sponge to maintain its finish. Even the act of eating required consideration. She avoided overly greasy foods that might interfere with her powder, instead opting for bread, cheese, and lightly cooked vegetables. This level of mindfulness was typical among women who valued appearance as both a personal and social instrument. After the meal, Eleanor decided to explore her garden, where herbs like rosemary, lavender, and chamomile grew abundantly. These were not only used for culinary and medicinal purposes, but also played a key role in cosmetic preparation. Lavender, for instance, could be infused in oils to scent the hair, while rosemary could add a gentle shine and protect strands from damage. Chamomile, when brewed into a weak infusion, was used to lighten fair hair subtly, a process known and employed by women seeking to enhance their natural coloring without resorting to harsh chemicals. Eleanor plucked sprigs carefully, mindful of the potency and freshness of each leaf. Her hands, though calloused from daily labor, moved with precision born of years of practice. The garden offered more than just ingredients. It provided inspiration. Eleanor observed how sunlight glinted on the petals of a deep red rose. Considering how similar hues could enhance lips or cheeks, the texture of leaves suggested ways to apply powders and tints more smoothly, while the aromas inspired the subtle scents added to face creams, hair oils, and powders. In medieval Europe, the line between gardening, cooking, and beauty preparation was fluid, and a woman like Eleanor had to master all three to maintain her household standards. As afternoon turned to early evening, the village quieted. Children returned from fields. Merchants closed stalls, tired, and the sounds of the day gave way to the creaking of carts and the distant calls of animals settling in for the night. Eleanor, having finished her outdoor tasks, returned indoors for a brief respite. She removed her outer layers and examined her reflection once more. The powder had settled, the rose petal's tint remained visible, and the subtle highlights on her cheekbones continued to catch the fading light. Every step of the day had left its mark on her appearance, and yet her preparation still conveyed elegance, modesty, and authority. Eleanor prepared for the final part of her day, the evening ritual of touch-ups and care. She carefully mixed a small portion of ground almonds with rose water to create a soothing paste, applying it gently to any dry patches on her skin. Then, using a fine brush, she reinforced the tint on her lips, ensuring it would last through the evening conversation and household interactions. Her eyes, slightly darkened by soot in the morning, were lightly refreshed with a damp cloth to remove any smudges, maintaining the natural emphasis that had been the hallmark of her beauty regimen. Her hair, slightly tousled by the breeze, was brushed carefully and rebraided for the night, secured with a small ribbon and a decorative pin. Each pin and ribbon carried subtle symbolism, from wealth and status to personal taste, and Eleanor chose them with care. Even the act of arranging hair conveyed information to those around her, whether neighbors, visiting family, or acquaintances in the village, in a society where social hierarchies were rigid and highly visible. Such subtleties were understood and appreciated before settling by the hearth. Eleanor reflected on the continuity of these practices. Every powder, pigment, and preparation told a story stretching back generations. The rituals she performed daily were not mere affectation. They were a living link to her heritage, a language of appearance that communicated who she was, where she came from, and how she navigated the social world. In a time when status and perception were as crucial as survival, mastery of these small but significant details was essential. By the time night fully descended, Eleanor's household was quiet, the day's labor complete. Candles flickered against the walls, casting warm, wavering light across her carefully prepared visage. The rituals of makeup, preparation, and care had framed her day, shaping her presence in both the private and public spheres. In the medieval world, beauty was never superficial. It was intertwined with identity, morality, and social intelligence. Eleanor understood this fully, and as she sat quietly by the hearth, she carried the weight and grace of that knowledge in every thoughtful movement and subtle smile. The following morning, a soft mist hovered over the village, clinging to the cobblestones and rooftops. Eleanor rose before dawn, as was her custom, mindful that the first light of day offered the best conditions for certain cosmetic applications. The cool air kissed her cheeks, and she moved deliberately to the basin in the corner of her room. Her water from the well had been drawn and left to settle overnight. The slight sediment in the water, filtered through careful settling, was believed to aid in softening the skin. Simple yet effective medieval practice. Eleanor's morning began with cleansing. She splashed the cold water on her face, followed by a gentle rub with a cloth soaked in a mixture of honey and milk. Honey, prized for its moisturizing and antibacterial properties, was a common ingredient in medieval beauty rituals, while milk served to soothe and soften the skin. The combination left her complexion supple, a natural canvas for the powders and pigments she would apply. Women of her era often relied on what was locally available: beeswax, crushed petals, and herbs like rosemary and sage. These ingredients were not only functional, but also carried subtle symbolic meanings. For example, rosemary was associated with memory and virtue, lavender with cleanliness and modesty. Applying them daily was both a practical and symbolic act. After cleansing, Eleanor reached for her powders. A mixture of finely ground alabaster and a touch of white clay gave her the desired pale tone, a visual cue of refinement and leisure. She applied it gently with a soft cloth, patting rather than rubbing to avoid abrasions. Her hands moved methodically, the rhythm ingrained from years of repetition. The pale complexion signaled that she had the luxury of spending her days indoors, safe from the sun and hard labor, mark of status as much as beauty. She occasionally paused to check her reflection in the polished copper basin, searing evenness and smoothness. Next, she attended to her cheeks. Using a small spoon, she applied a crushed mixture of rose petals and crushed berries, mixed with a tiny amount of fat, to create a natural blush. The effect was subtle, a delicate hint of color that suggested health and vitality without appearing contrived. In medieval Europe, the line between art and necessity in makeup was delicate. Women sought to enhance their natural features, not to create a mask. Eleanor's application was a quiet statement of taste, discipline, and awareness of social norms. Her lips received a similar treatment. She gently pressed a blend of crushed cherries and pomegranate seeds, mixed with a small amount of olive oil onto her lips. The resulting shade was soft, yet perceptible, an understated signal of health and refinement. Eleanor had learned from her mother that the lips were a focal point, conveying subtle messages in social interactions. The choice of color, the precision of application, and the consistency of the mixture all spoke to her attention too. Detail and understanding of the codes of appearance. Eyes were treated with a minimalist approach. Eleanor used a small brush to apply soot from the hearth, mixed with a bit of water, to the edges of her eyelids. The effect was a gentle darkening that highlighted the natural contours of the eye, without creating an artificial or dramatic impression. Eyebrows, slightly plucked to maintain shape, but not unnaturally thin, framed her gaze. A faint application of crushed nut powder added depth and definition where needed. In her society, subtlety was prized. Overemphasis could be seen as frivolous or improper, while the right touch conveyed both intelligence and refinement. Once her face was prepared, Eleanor moved to her hair. She brushed her long chestnut strands carefully, smoothing tangles and adding a small quantity of scented oil infused with herbs from her garden. The oil added shine, protected the hair from the elements, and imparted a delicate fragrance that would linger throughout the day. Hairstyling was not just about appearance. It was a signal of social position and personal discipline. Eleanor preferred a braided style, wrapped around her head and secured with pins made of bone or carved wood, often accented with small ribbons. These accessories, though subtle, were chosen to reflect both her taste and her family standing as she finished her hair. Eleanor considered the larger context of these practices. Every pigment, every powder, every herbal infusion had a history, a lineage, tracing back generations. Ingredients were sourced locally or imported through trade routes, often carrying stories from distant lands. The act of applying makeup was itself a ritual, connection to women who had lived before her, sharing wisdom through touch, observation, and repetition. These practices were practical, aesthetic, and symbolic, shaping both personal identity and social perception. Stepping outside, Eleanor observed the daily rhythms of the village. Women carried baskets of produce, children ran barefoot through the streets, and merchants shouted to attract customers. Each interaction was a subtle negotiation of appearance and status. Those who paid attention to grooming and presentation commanded respect and deference. Those who neglected these rituals risked social scrutiny. Eleanor walked among them with a quiet confidence. Her appearance, both natural and deliberate, a reflection of her knowledge, patience, and care. She paused at the well to refill her water jug, noting a young apprentice girl watching her movements intently. Eleanor smiled kindly, remembering her own first lessons in the art of cosmetics. Often, these skills were taught informally through observation and gentle instruction. The apprentice mirrored Eleanor's gestures, pressing powders gently onto her own cheeks, trying to mimic the subtle blending she observed. Eleanor offered a nod of encouragement, understanding the importance of mentorship and passing down these traditions. By mid-morning, Eleanor returned home to tend to the household tasks that punctuated her day. She cooked with care, mindful of protecting her face and hair from smoke or grease, and kept her hands clean to avoid smudging the delicate powders applied earlier. The interweaving of domestic work and personal preparation required discipline, awareness, and patience. In many ways, the act of maintaining one's appearance was inseparable from the management of the household itself. Later, she visited her small herb garden, selecting sprigs of rosemary, lavender, and chamomile for use in hair oils and infused waters. These ingredients were versatile, valued not only for their fragrance, but also for their soothing and protective properties. Eleanor crushed leaves and petals carefully, combining them with oils to create mixtures that would nourish both skin and hair. Each step was deliberate, practice honed through experience and guided by tradition. As the day drew on, Eleanor prepared for the afternoon market. She dressed in her finest gown, a modest but well-crafted garment dyed with natural pigments. She carefully arranged her hair, reapplied subtle touches of powder and tint, and ensured her lips carried a soft, enduring color. In medieval society, the presentation of oneself was a continuous dialogue with the world, and Eleanor understood it instinctively. Every detail of her preparation, every powder, herb, and pigment communicated a message of refinement, competence, and social awareness. Eleanor's awareness extended to the symbolic dimensions of beauty as well. Pale skin suggested virtue and leisure. Tinted lips and cheeks indicated vitality and youth. Well-maintained hair conveyed both health and social position. These signals were not superficial, but deeply embedded in the cultural and social fabric of her world. A woman's appearance influenced her interactions, opportunities, and even her reputation within the village and beyond. Eleanor navigated this terrain with care, balancing tradition, personal taste, and the expectations of her community. As the evening approached, Eleanor returned home, her preparations having guided her through the day with subtle authority. She tended to her children, managed household duties, and reflected on the continuity of these practices. Beauty in the medieval world was an active, deliberate, and socially significant pursuit. Every brushstroke, every pigment, and every herbal infusion carried meaning and purpose. Eleanor's day, from the first touch of powder at dawn to the final arrangement of her hair at sunset, was a testament to the enduring legacy of these traditions, connecting her to generations of women who had walked similar paths and preserved the knowledge that defined both appearance and social identity. The following morning dawned with a soft haze settling over the village, the kind of mist that made every roof, tile, and cobblestone glisten with tiny beads of moisture. Eleanor woke early as always, moving quietly to avoid disturbing her children, who still slumbered under the warm blankets of the hearth-warmed room. Her first steps were toward the wooden basin by the window, where water from the well had been collected the night before and allowed to settle. The clarity of the water was important. Even slight sediment could interfere with the delicate powders and pigments she would soon apply. Eleanor began her ritual with a gentle cleansing. She poured the cool water over her face, feeling the sharpness of the morning against her skin. Then she reached for a small bowl of milk mixed with honey. It's both local and precious, a combination renowned for softening and soothing the skin. She rubbed the mixture in small, circular motions, careful not to tug or irritate the delicate areas around her eyes and mouth. This ritual, passed down through generations, was more than mere hygiene. It was a symbolic act of preparation, pause in the day to connect with herself and her lineage. Once her skin was softened and lightly nourished, Eleanor turned to her powders. A fine mixture of ground alabaster and clay, combined with a hint of crushed pearl, gave her face the pale, luminous quality admired among women a-standing. She applied it with a soft cloth, pressing gently to avoid streaks. The effect was not stark, but subtle, a quiet enhancement that suggested refinement, status, and careful attention to detail. In medieval society, such attention to complexion communicated not vanity, but virtue, ability to maintain composure, grace, and dignity in daily life. Next, Eleanor attended to her cheeks. She crushed fresh rose petals and berries into a fine paste, adding a bit of rendered animal fat to help the color adhere. The rosy tint was applied with her fingertips, blending carefully into the pale base. A natural flush on the cheeks signaled health, vitality, and youthfulness. It was an art passed down through generations, mothers teaching daughters, sisters sharing knowledge, and women exchanging tips during visits to the market or the apothecary. Each application was a silent conversation, a demonstration of skill, taste, and social awareness. Her lips received similar care. Eleanor gently pressed a mixture of crushed cherries and pomegranate seeds, blended with olive oil, onto her lips. The color was soft but noticeable, a gentle contrast to the pale skin of her face. Lips were seen as both expressive and delicate. Even minor imperfections in their preparation could convey negligence or lack of care. Eleanor's years of practice allowed her to achieve consistency, showing that her expression conveyed grace and composure throughout the day. Eleanor's eyes, always a point of focus, were next. She used a small brush to apply a thin line of soot from the fireplace along the edges of her eyelids. The purpose was not dramatic transformation, but subtle enhancement, deepening the natural contours of the eyes. Eyebrows were gently shaped, slightly plucked to maintain their form, with a light dusting of nut-based powder to add definition. These elements framed her gaze, giving it depth and attentiveness while adhering to the heiress' aesthetic preference for modesty and subtlety. Hair, the final element of her morning preparation, received meticulous attention. Eleanor brushed her chestnut strands carefully, untangling knots and ensuring smoothness. A small amount of herb-infused oil added sheen and fragrance. Lavender and rosemary were favorites, both for their scent and their gentle conditioning effects. She braided her hair, coiling it neatly around her head and securing it with carved wooden pins and a small ribbon. Hair was a statement as much as a practical matter. Its arrangement communicated social position, personal taste, and the discipline expected of a woman of her standing, with her face and hair prepared. Eleanor examined the broader context of her routines. Every action, every crushed petal, every dab of powder was informed by centuries of observation, experimentation, and cultural codification. Ingredients were carefully sourced, often traded across great distances. Knowledge of preparation, timing, and application was considered essential for maintaining both appearance and reputation. For women in her society, these routines were a form of literacy, a nonverbal expression of knowledge, virtue, and social understanding. Eleanor left her home briefly, walking through the village to observe other women preparing for their own daily engagements. Some carried small pouches of powder or pigment. Others had tools for plucking and shaping hair or eyebrows. The subtle differences in materials and technique reflected both social status and individual taste. Observing these variations allowed Eleanor to refine her own practices, incorporating new ideas while remaining faithful to her family's traditions. In medieval communities, such observational learning was as important as formal instruction. Beauty and presentation were taught as much by watching as by doing. Returning home, Eleanor tended to her children and household duties, conscious of how domestic labor could affect her appearance. Cooking with open flames, handling flour, or stirring thick stews all required care to preserve the integrity of her makeup. She used cloths and careful hand placement to shield her face, demonstrating an awareness that beauty and practicality were intertwined. Her movements were deliberate, each gesture informed by experience and cultural expectation. By late afternoon, Eleanor prepared for a brief visit to the apothecary. She carried small containers of crushed petals and powdered minerals, tended to replenish her supplies and experiment with subtle new mixtures. The apothecary, an older man with decades of experience, offered advice and shared stories of exotic ingredients and their applications. Eleanor listened attentively, taking mental notes, aware that such knowledge could enhance both her appearance and social reputation. The apothecary shop was a small, dimly lit space lined with jars of pigments, herbs, and powders. The air was thick with the mingling aromas of dried flowers, crushed minerals, and infused oils. Eleanor handled each item with care, understanding the importance of storage, freshness, and combination. A misstep could affect the color, consistency, or safety of a mixture. She selected crushed rose petals, a small vial of powdered alum for preserving freshness, and a delicate mineral-based powder to highlight her cheekbones subtly. Each choice was deliberate, informed by tradition, observation, and a personal aesthetic. As Eleanor left the shop, the sun had dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the village. She carried her carefully chosen materials home, reflecting on the integration of beauty, social perception, and practical skill. Every powder, every pigment, and every mixture was a link in a chain connecting her to generations of women who had navigated similar expectations, blending art, science, and social awareness in their daily routines. Evening found Eleanor in her private chamber, reviewing the day's activities and preparing for the night. She reapplied subtle touches of powder and color, ensuring her appearance remained composed and refined. The final steps of her ritual were quiet, deliberate, and reflective. A gentle touch of almond and rosewater paste to soothe the skin, careful smoothing of hair, and minor adjustments to ribbons and pins. By the time she sat by the hearth to rest, Lena's presence reflected both the care of her hands and the wisdom of her lineage, a living testament to the intricate interplay of beauty, tradition, and identity in medieval life. The next morning arrived with a crisp chill in the air, a reminder that autumn was slowly settling over the village. Eleanor awoke before the first light, the soft, gray glow of dawn filtering through the small window of her chamber. The house was silent, except for the faint crackle of embers in the hearth. And she moved quietly, careful not to disturb her children. Her morning routine, though long established, carried with it a sense of ritual and mindfulness that set the tone for the day. She first attended to the cleansing of her face. Eleanor poured cool water from the well into her wooden basin, letting it run over her cheeks and forehead. The freshness of the water invigorated her, and she gently rubbed her skin with a soft cloth, removing any traces of sleep. Next, she applied a mixture of milk and honey, softly massaging it into her skin. This combination was cherished in medieval Europe for its dual purpose. It softened the skin and offered protection against environmental elements such as wind and sun. Eleanor's grandmother had taught her that the careful preparation of the skin was the foundation of all beauty. Without it, powders and pigments would sit unevenly or fade quickly. Once her complexion was nourished, Eleanor reached for her powders, a mixture of finely ground alabaster and white clay, carefully sifted to remove any coarse particles, provided the pale, luminous base favored among women of her standing. She dabbed the powder with a soft cloth, working from the center of her face outward, ensuring that the transition to her neck and décolletage was seamless. In medieval society, pale skin was associated with leisure, refinement, and virtue. It signaled to the world that she did not labor in the sun, a subtle yet powerful indicator of status and upbringing. Next came the blush, a delicate application of crushed rose petals mixed with a small amount of fat to ensure adherence. Eleanor used her fingertips to apply the mixture, blending it carefully to create a natural flush on her cheeks. In medieval times, the appearance of health and vitality was highly prized. A rosy glow suggested that a woman was lively, youthful, and capable of managing her household with energy and grace. The art of blush was subtle, relying on the careful blending of natural pigments rather than dramatic color, emphasizing refinement over ostentation. Her lips received similar attention. Eleanor applied a mixture of crushed cherries and pomegranate seeds, blended with olive oil. The color was gentle yet perceptible, enhancing the natural contours of her mouth. The choice of hue, the method of application, and even the timing were all deliberate. A well-tinted lip could convey subtle social messages, signaling attentiveness, composure, and taste. Eleanor had learned from her mother that the lips were a silent language, capable of influencing perception and communication without words. Eyes were treated with understated care. She applied a thin line of soot from the hearth to her eyelids, just enough to add definition without creating a stark contrast. Eyebrows were groomed with small plucking tools, maintaining natural shape while adding slight emphasis with a powder made from crushed nuts or charcoal. The result was a look that enhanced her natural features, making her gaze appear thoughtful, attentive, and composed. In the medieval aesthetic, the goal was always enhancement, never exaggeration. Hair, perhaps the most socially significant aspect of a woman's appearance, received meticulous attention. Eleanor brushed her long chestnut hair, smoothing tangles and adding a few drops of herb-infused oil, lavender, rosemary, and chamomile were common ingredients, each contributing to shine, fragrance, and health. The hair was braided and coiled neatly around her head, secured with pins carved from bone and accented with subtle ribbons, dyed with natural pigments. These details conveyed social status, personal taste, and discipline, essential elements for a woman navigating both domestic and public life. With her face and hair prepared, Eleanor paused to consider the broader cultural and historical context of her actions. Every pigment, every powdered mineral, every herbal infusion had a lineage, often tracing back generations and encompassing knowledge from distant lands. Ingredients were not chosen solely for their cosmetic effect. They were selected for symbolism, tradition, and social resonance. Knowledge of beauty practices was integral to a woman's identity, reflecting both personal skill and adherence to cultural norms. By mid-morning, Eleanor prepared to visit the market. She dressed in a modest yet elegant gown, dyed with natural pigments and carefully cleaned. Her appearance would communicate refinement, competence, and awareness of social hierarchy. Walking through the village, she observed other women attending to their own routines, some checking powders and pigments, others adjusting hair or scarves. Each action, though seemingly mundane, was a reflection of centuries of tradition, a visual language that conveyed status, virtue, and taste. At the market, Eleanor stopped at the apothecary to replenish her supplies. She selected crushed rose petals for blush, powdered minerals for subtle highlights, small vials of herbal-infused oils for her hair. The apothecary shared news of rare ingredients, advising her on new mixtures that might enhance her daily routines. Eleanor listened attentively, noting both the practical applications and the social significance of these materials. In her society, knowledge of cosmetics was not trivial. It was intertwined with social influence, reputation, and the subtle management of household and personal affairs. Returning home, Eleanor tended to her children and household duties, careful to preserve the integrity of her makeup. Cooking over open flames, handling flour, and performing other tasks required deliberate movements to prevent smudging or fading. She understood that beauty was an ongoing, active process, maintained throughout the day with attention and skill. Every gesture, from washing dishes to tending to her garden, was performed with mindfulness, balancing practicality with appearance as the afternoon faded into evening. Eleanor prepared for the final steps of her daily ritual. She refreshed her powders and tints, applied a gentle paste of almond and rose water to soothe her skin, and adjusted her hair with the precision of someone who understood both form and function. By the time she sat by the hearth, the house quiet and the day's labors complete, her appearance reflected discipline, skill, and continuity. Every touch of pigment, every braid, and every herbal infusion connected her to generations of women who had practiced these arts with care, subtly reinforcing identity, status, and personal expression. Eleanor reflected on the intricate interplay of beauty, culture, and social expectation. In the medieval period, appearance was not simply decorative. It was communicative, practical, and symbolic. Her routines demonstrated knowledge, skill, and awareness, shaping not only how she was perceived, but also how she navigated daily life. Through her careful application of powders, pigments, and herbal preparations, Eleanor maintained the delicate balance between tradition, personal taste, and societal expectation, embodying a living testament to the enduring artistry and wisdom of medieval women. The morning light filtered gently through the narrow windows of Eleanor's chamber, casting a soft glow on the wooden floorboards. It was another crisp day in the village, and Eleanor had risen early, as was her custom. She moved quietly, careful not to awaken her children, their soft breathing the only sound in the stillness of the room. Her morning rituals were both practical and symbolic, a daily meditation that prepared her for the demands of the household and the scrutiny of the village. First, she attended to her face. She poured cool water into her basin, the droplets shimmering as she splashed them onto her cheeks and forehead. The water, drawn from the village well and allowed to settle overnight, was believed to cleanse impurities and refresh the skin. After washing, she applied a mixture of milk and honey, massaging it gently into her skin. This combination was prized across medieval Europe for its moisturizing properties and subtle fragrance. Eleanor's grandmother had always emphasized the importance of this step, teaching that proper preparation of the skin created the foundation for all other beauty practices. Once her skin was cleansed and nourished, Helena turned to her powders. She used a fine blend of alabaster and white clay, carefully sifted to remove any coarse particles. The powder gave her a pale, luminous complexion, a hallmark of refinement and social status in medieval society. She applied it with gentle, patting motions, working from the center of her face outward to ensure even coverage. Pale skin was a visible sign that a woman led a life of relative leisure, shielded from the labor of the field, subtle but powerful indicator of wealth and virtue. Next, she applied blush, a delicate mixture of crushed rose petals and a small amount of rendered fat. Eleanor used her fingertips to blend the color into her cheeks, achieving a natural flush that suggested health and vitality. The subtlety of the application was crucial. Overtly bright or artificial hues could be perceived as improper or unrefined. The art of applying blush was passed down from mother to daughter, a blend of observation, practice, and instinct. Her lips received similar care. Eleanor pressed a mixture of crushed berries and pomegranate seeds, blended with olive oil, onto her mouth. The color was soft yet perceptible, enhancing the natural shape and fullness of her lips. In medieval culture, the lips were a focus of expression, and the application of tint was both aesthetic and symbolic. A well-colored lip suggested vitality, attentiveness, social awareness. Her eyes were accentuated with understated methods. She used a small brush to apply a thin line of soot from the hearth along the edges of her eyelids. Eyebrows were carefully plucked to maintain their natural arch, with a light dusting of powdered nuts to add subtle definition. The goal was always enhancement rather than transformation, a reflection of the era's preference for modesty and natural beauty. Eleanor's gaze, framed by these careful touches, conveyed intelligence, attentiveness, and composure. Hair, as always, received meticulous attention. Eleanor brushed her long chestnut strands, smoothing tangles and adding a few drops of herb-infused oil. Lavender and rosemary were favored, providing shine, fragrance, and protection. She braided her hair neatly, coiling it around her head and securing it with carved wooden pins and a small ribbon. Here was a key indicator of social status, personal care, and discipline. The arrangement of strands, the shine, and even the subtle scent communicated messages to everyone she encountered, from neighbors to visiting family. After completing her personal preparations, Eleanor reflected on the historical and cultural context of her rituals. Every powder, pigment, and herbal infusion had a lineage, often extending back generations. Knowledge of these practices was transmitted carefully, through instruction, observation, and repeated practice. The combination of artistry, chemistry, and social understanding required for these routines was both practical and symbolic, shaping identity and perception in profound ways. By mid-morning, Eleanor prepared to attend the market. She dressed in a gown dyed with natural pigments, modest yet elegant, reflecting her status and personal taste. Walking through the village, she observed other women preparing for their own routines, adjusting powders, tidying hair, and selecting accessories. Each action, though seemingly mundane, was deeply rooted in centuries of tradition. Appearance was a language, a means of communication that conveyed social standing, virtue, and refinement. At the market, Eleanor visited the apothecary to replenish her supplies. She chose crushed rose petals for blush, powdered minerals for highlighting, and small vials of herb-infused oils for her hair. The apothecary shared news of rare ingredients, providing guidance and suggestions for subtle improvements. Eleanor listened attentively, understanding that her choices reflected not only personal taste, but also knowledge and social awareness. In medieval society, the mastery of beauty practices was intertwined with reputation, authority, and the ability to navigate complex social hierarchies. Returning home, Eleanor carefully maintained her appearance while tending to household duties. She cooked with attention to protect her powder and pigments, handled flour and water with deliberate movements, and shielded her face from smoke. The continuous care required throughout the day was part of the discipline and artistry of medieval beauty. Every action, from sweeping the floor to adjusting her hair, was informed by awareness and skill. As evening approached, Eleanor completed her final touches. She reapplied powder and tints where necessary, applied the soothing paste of almond and rose water, and adjusted her hair and accessories. By the time she sat by the hearth, the house quiet and the day's work done, her appearance reflected diligence, skill, and continuity. Each pigment, braid, and herbal infusion was a connection to generations of women who had cultivated these arts with care and reverence. Eleanor's reflection on her day revealed the depth of her understanding. Beauty in the medieval period was never superficial. It was a deliberate practice, deeply interwoven with social expectation, personal identity, and cultural tradition. Her routine, performed with skill and mindfulness, communicated knowledge, refinement, and authority. The powders, pigments, and herbs she used daily were not just adornments, but tools that shaped perception, reinforced social norms, and preserved a lineage of artistry that had endured for centuries. The sun was beginning its slow descent, casting a warm, golden glow over the village. Eleanor sat by the hearth, the day's labors and rituals complete. The quiet of the evening was comforting, punctuated only by the soft crackle of embers and the distant calls of animals settling for the night. She allowed herself a moment to reflect on the continuity of her practices, the intricate dance of preparation, presentation, and social awareness that had guided her. Throughout the day, her morning and afternoon had been filled with the familiar steps: cleansing, nourishing, powdering, tinting, and braiding. Every pigment, every herbal infusion, and every carefully applied touch had carried meaning, a connection to centuries of tradition. Eleanor understood that beauty in the medieval period was far more than appearance. It was a language, a social tool, and a repository of knowledge. Her pale complexion spoke of refinement and leisure. Her flushed cheeks suggested vitality, and her carefully arranged hair communicated discipline and social awareness. Tonight, she performed her final evening ritual. She lightly reapplied a touch of powder along her forehead and cheeks, smoothing the pale finish to maintain the subtle glow she had cultivated throughout the day. Her lips were refreshed with a soft berry tint, ensuring the natural vibrancy that spoke of health and care. Using a small brush, she enhanced the gentle contours of her eyes, emphasizing attentiveness without artifice. Each movement was deliberate, a final note in the day-long symphony of preparation. Eleanor's thoughts drifted to the generations of women who had come before her. Mothers, grandmothers, and distant ancestors had performed the same rituals, each adapting them to their own time and circumstances. They had discovered the properties of crushed petals, powdered minerals, and herbal oils, experimenting with combinations and techniques that allowed them to convey health, virtue, and social awareness. Every jar of pigment, every vial of oil, every small sachet of petals she used was the culmination of centuries of knowledge, carefully preserved and passed down, even in the quiet solitude of her chamber. Eleanor felt the weight and continuity of this tradition. Her appearance was a living connection to a lineage of women who had understood the power of subtlety, the importance of observation, and the necessity of skillful execution. In medieval society, these practices were essential, not merely for vanity, but for survival, respect, and the maintenance of social and familial reputation. The household was calm now. Children slept soundly, and the work of the day had faded into routine. Eleanor tidied her tools and ingredients, arranging powders, petals, and oils carefully for the following morning. Even the act of organization was a form of care, ensuring that each material retained its potency and that the rituals could continue seamlessly. The discipline required to maintain such routines was itself a reflection of character and education, a demonstration of refinement that extended beyond mere cosmetics. As night deepened, Eleanor finally settled near the hearth, her hands resting in her lap. The faint shimmer of mineral powder on her cheeks caught the firelight, a subtle reminder of the day's careful attention. Her braided hair, lightly scented with lavender and rosemary, reflected both care and heritage. Every element of her appearance told a story of lineage, skill, observation, and the nuanced social understanding that guided her daily life. Eleanor allowed herself a quiet smile, reflecting on the integration of beauty, tradition, and identity. She understood that these rituals were not just about external appearance. They were expressions of knowledge, continuity, and social intelligence. In the medieval world, a woman's presentation was deeply interwoven with her reputation, her family standing, and the unspoken codes of community. Each day, each application of powder, tint, or herbal preparation was a small act of authority, refinement, and communication. Finally, Eleanor leaned back, the day's work done, and allowed herself to simply be. The rituals of beauty, the observations of the village, the careful preparation of skin, lips, eyes, and hair, all of it had culminated in a presence that was both natural and deliberate. In the quiet of the evening, she felt the legacy of generations, the subtle artistry of her daily life, and the enduring connection between appearance, culture, and identity. The glow of the hearth illuminated her thoughtful face, a testament to centuries of wisdom, care, and the understated power of a woman who understood the language of her own presence. As the fire's embers faded and the village settled into night, Eleanor closed her eyes, the rituals of the day complete, and the continuity of tradition secured. In the medieval world, beauty was never superficial. It was lived, practiced, and deeply meaningful. Eleanor's day, like those of the women before her, had been an expression of art, knowledge, and heritage, a story told in powders, pigments, herbs, and careful hands, woven seamlessly into the fabric of daily life. The night was quiet, the village at rest, and Eleanor's chamber held the faint fragrance of lavender and rosewater. In this stillness, the enduring legacy of medieval women's beauty practices remained alive, embodied in the measured gestures, thoughtful preparation, and deliberate presentation of one who understood their significance fully. The story of the day ended, but the tradition would continue, quietly, subtly, and profoundly, as it always had.